you have been muted, so we will not be able to hear you. So the way that you can communicate to us is in that chat box. So that's the introduction for redistricting. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our partner in this work. We have Matthew Cropper from Cropper GIS. He's really going to lead us through this presentation. So Matthew, floor is all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols, and thank you all for coming and attending this presentation. You know, here we are in unprecedented times, and doing planning work through the course of the events that are occurring in our world right now. And I really applaud New Kent County for forging a path and establishing practices and methods with us on ways to engage the public in a way that we can still accomplish our tasks and objectives and do our work, but do it in more of a remote manner, and doing it remotely like we are, but then also still providing the community engagement component that we believe is so powerful. So my name is Matthew Cropper. I'm with Cropper GIS Consulting, and we have a presentation that I'm going to walk through and also show you some of the tools and ways that you can participate, and ways that you can start giving us input. As Mr. Nichols said, if you have questions as the presentation is going on, it would be good just to type those in the chat window, and then we'll cover those. And then we'll also look at creating a frequently asked questions document to help build on as we continue through the process. So this is a presentation that I'm giving, and this is also available online on the school's webpage. So if anybody is not able to be here for this particular presentation, they can go back and look at this. It's also being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. And so there's going to be recordings of the conversations as well. So anybody who can't participate at this particular time at this meeting can still take advantage and come back and watch and see what we have to say today. So this is a platform that we are going to be using interactive maps and interactive web pages to help tell the story. And as we continue through the process, we will keep building on this platform and keep expanding to start showing more detail and more information as they come available. This is really designed as a redistricting study with a focus on fall of 2021 and to incorporate this new elementary school. Before I get too far into some of the nuts and bolts of our process, just a little bit about us. We are Cropper GIS Consulting. We're based out of Ohio, but we do this kind of work all over the United States. We actually have remote offices, and so our staff are scattered all over the eastern seaboard. We have 6 total staff members. We're a pretty small company, but we do big things. So our specialty is just this kind of work, school redistricting. We also help with facility planning and community engagement, and also demographic studies and things like that. And I'm Matthew Cropper. I have over 20 years experience in doing this, and I will be facilitating and managing the project from the start to the finish. So let's see, hold on. Yes. So this is a map that just gives you an idea of, shows you the current zones for New Kent County. And you can see there's two colors right now. And those background colors actually represent the zones for each of the current elementary schools. There are currently 2 elementary schools, and a new elementary school hasn't been built in several decades. Both of these elementary schools, Watkins and New Kent, are overcrowded. They average 111% utilization of 100% operating of their total capacity. They both utilize portable buildings to help manage the enrollment that they serve. And in order to address the overcrowding that exists at the elementary level, the county is planning to build a 3rd elementary school on the west end of the county. You can see that on the map over here on the far west, the west end sector of the county is where the new elementary, the 3rd elementary school for the county is going to be located. So with the construction of a new elementary school, attendance boundaries need to be adjusted to better manage the capacity and equalize the utilization among all these 3 schools. So when this is all said and done, you're going to have 3 different background colors, 3 different zones. And if you live inside that zone, you're assigned to that particular elementary school. So the primary objectives for this presentation, for this study, is to establish a zone for that new elementary school. They're planning 750 seats for that school. It's planned to open fall 2021. Our objectives are to reduce the overcrowding in those two existing elementary schools and balance the enrollment among the three schools, but also do it in a proactive manner so that we can be mindful of future growth, and so the boundaries can hold as long as possible. For instance, if an area is expected to grow a lot more with new home construction and things like that, we may want to assign fewer students to that school right when they open so that they can grow into that to a comfortable utilization. And likewise, if another school is expected, enrollment is expected to decline, which I'm not sure that's the case in any of their two schools, we may be able to fill it up a little bit higher so that enrollment can come down into an effective utilization. But we basically do this in a sense of being proactive as possible and making sure that the boundaries hold as long as possible. This is a figure that shows you the current utilization of the schools, the current enrollment as of March of 2020. And you can see that Watkins is operating at 114% of their capacity, and New Kent is at 109% of their capacity. And so there certainly is an evident need for a third school to come online and help bring their utilization of the elementary schools to a more effective capacity. We have a set of criteria to follow as we work through redistricting, and think of these as the rules to follow when we start looking at moving a line one way or the other. It's important to note that these criteria are not in any particular order of priority. Utilization always tends to sort of rise to the top because that is an objective and a criteria. And so that one always kind of takes precedent over a lot of the other criteria, but really think of all these criteria as being in one basket. And the best plan when this is all said and done will be one that addresses all of these criteria as best as possible. You can't focus solely on one element of these criteria because then you start to deviate further away. Like for instance, if we were to assign all the students that are closest to a school to that school, we could end up with a utilization of 150 to 200%. So we have to find a balance of the criteria as it relates to these factors. And they are balanced building utilization. So try to ensure that they're equitable utilization of schools across the district. And also be mindful of the portables and try to do our planning work without that portable capacity, if at all possible, knowing that some of these portables that are on these campuses are probably more than portable because they have a lot of infrastructure built around them. And so so we will be looking at the portable space as part of our work, but we'll also be knowledgeable of how much space is being used for portables and to be able to adapt to that. We want to minimize the impact on students. And so try to develop a plan that moves as few students as possible, but still accomplishes our objectives. Trying to maximize transportation efficiency. So be mindful of how far students have to travel to school, whether it's on a bus or whether it's the parents or the guardians transporting those children. Using major roads and natural boundaries wherever feasible to define attendance zones. So this helps. An efficient boundary is one that you can describe verbally to your neighbor. That it goes down this highway, then it goes along this river, and then goes up along here, and that can actually be indicative of a pretty efficient boundary. And so using major roads is also good because it minimizes the number of times buses have to travel across those major roads, and it just further bolsters the safety and security of children as they're getting to and from school. Make all efforts to establish contiguous zones. And so this is not creating a satellite zone. So don't go into the heart of one area and carve out a subdivision and send it across town to another school and creating what we call a satellite area, and just little pockets in small enclaves in a zone. We see that in a lot of districts, but most of the time when we come in to help a district out, we are tasked to help resolve some of those. You don't have any of those in New Kent right now. I certainly don't think that there's a need for that. And so we will certainly try and make all efforts to establish one zone per school. Make all efforts to minimize the division of clearly identifiable community components. So this is really addressing the community dynamic and not drawing the line down of an attendance area down the middle of a residential street. So if you have a community that lives together, they barbecue, they've got friends across the street and things like that in residential areas, you want to maintain that community dynamic. If you do have to move an area to a school, that areas would move all together as opposed to dividing a community in half. And this could be for a single family subdivision. It also is applicable for apartment complexes and things like that. So that's a very common criteria and one that we will be looking at here. And then yeah, the transportation efficiency is listed twice there, but so we are looking at transportation efficiency, as I had mentioned. Let's talk about the planning team. So the superintendent mentioned that we have a group that we are working with. This is what we're referring to as the planning team. They are made up of school division central office staff. So people from transportation, the central office, student assignment. We also have members from the county planning and economic development. School board members are on this. And then there are also some members of the public on the committee to give us input from what kind of insights they're giving us from a local perspective. These planning team meetings will be facilitated remotely. So we have established a process of going through remote meetings and also public engagement sessions through this format right here to engage you as a public, make sure that you're informed and you're following the process, giving you an opportunity to provide input to us that we can take in and consider as we continue to work through a plan here. This planning team met once in March, and they have been oriented on the process. And we will be meeting again in June with this group and starting to get into options. So we have no redistricting options right now, but we are basically setting the stage here and informing you on what's coming up. Let's talk about the process for redistricting. So there are several phases that we have identified that in a redistricting study. One of them is collection of data. So we've collected information from a variety of sources: the county, the school district, Census Bureau, the planning offices and things like that, are giving us information on future housing. And we're basically collecting as much information as we can that helps inform us regarding the objectives and criteria for this study. Data collection the majority of it has been completed, but it never ends. It never finishes. If there's more information that comes to light, we will certainly bring that in and incorporate that. And so that is something that it's really an open book. The data collection process will continue as we continue to hear input from the public and also people in the planning team. We take all this information and we assimilate it all into our GIS, our mapping system, so that we can efficiently and accurately study maps and boundaries and understand how many students live in different areas. And so that all has taken place as well. Our third phase is actually getting into some options development. So this is where we start to develop a series of baseline options that the planning team can look at and the staff can consider as we start to work through maps. So we work through a set of beginning options, and then we will share those options with the staff, and also this planning team will be working through them and working to refine the options, really looking at creating how many different options, as many options as possible to start, and to see how many different ways can the boundaries be configured to accomplish our objectives. And then we'll go through a process of weeding them out. And we will be sharing these with you in forthcoming months. Once we have some options that are ready to be made public, we will certainly share them as soon as we can. And so the fourth phase of this is planning team and public engagement. So this is what, as I mentioned, we'll be meeting with this planning group all the way through September to analyze data, the maps, and working through that. And then the final phase is the recommendation to the school board. So this shows you a timeline, and this kind of lays things out so you can see how the study is the time frame for the study. Here we are May 12th, doing this public information session. Like I said, we don't have any options today, but they will be coming. We will be sharing options with you August 17th. And it's very possible that as we start working through these planning team meetings in June and July, we will be sharing information that we've shared with the planning team on their redistricting page, so that you guys can all start to see what kind of things are being considered and what materials are being studied by this planning group. So the public information session 2 is August 17th, and that's going to be the next time when we get back together with a group like this, and we'll have more in-depth presentation of the actual options, and then also invite you to participate in a survey at that time to give us some more input related to the options. The group will meet, as I said, all the way through September, and we're expecting to give a presentation of the recommendations to the board on October the 5th. One of the things you'll see on maps that we start to share with you are what we call planning blocks. So you could see that if you look at these planning blocks, this is a screenshot of them. The black and white dashed outlines represent a planning block. We have designed these planning blocks to try to keep that community dynamic together and to not draw a block down the middle of a residential street if at all possible. If you identify a planning block as you start to study this as members of the public, and you see planning blocks are splitting a community or a neighborhood, please let us know so that we can certainly address that. We can make changes to these planning blocks through the course of the study if we do see a planning block violates any of our objectives or criteria. One of the good ways to communicate is to identify the planning block number. So you can say, if you're giving input, you can say, hi, I live in this planning block and these are my thoughts. And that way we can kind of look at a micro level area of the district and understand some of the considerations and thoughts that you're having for the area that you live in or that you wanted to comment on. You'll notice below each planning block is also a number that represents the number of students that go to New Kent County schools that live inside each planning block. And so this would be, we have them for elementary. We also, I think we have planning block counts for middle and high school, just for information. And so you could see in any one of these planning blocks how many students live inside each planning block. And this can inform you to understand why there may be a zone configured the way it is. And also you can maybe look at, well, if you move this planning block over here and this planning block over there, you could provide some constructive suggestions that may bring us closer to adhering to the criteria. That's something that we certainly will listen to and study as the process matures. So the planning blocks are something that you'll see on a lot of maps that we do share and we will share with you. So how can members of the public participate? So we have given you a lot of different ways to participate in this process. There is a redistricting page designed that the school district has designed that has a lot of this information that I am sharing, that we will continue to share, will be at this redistricting page. If you look at this page, you can click on it. You can get to it through my presentation, or you can go right to the New Kent County's website and be able to find out the redistricting page and locate it. But on this, it shows important dates, agendas and presentations, information that we have shared, that we've already put together. You can see the timeline, and this will continue to grow as we develop more information. More information will be put on here, like this presentation this evening. You'll also notice that there is a general feedback survey. So this is actually just it's really just to give us general feedback at this point. There are no options, like I said. So what this is just gives you a platform to tell us where you come from, what area you're from, maybe a little bit about the subdivision or the area you live in, so that we can understand maybe a street intersection if you don't live in a subdivision, something so that we can kind of hone in on where you're talking about. And you can provide us any feedback that you want about the process. This is a general feedback form, and this will be open through the course of the whole study that we are monitoring, and as well as the school district has the ability to see. And we'll be sharing this with the public planning team, and we'll also be putting sharing these comments with the public as well. There is an online map and that we have created that eventually will have options on here, but this is an interactive map that we have found to be very useful. And you can find this on the redistricting page. It's the link is croppermap.com/New Kent. This works on any platform, any Mac or a PC environment, even on mobile devices. And what you'll see is that looking at this map, as you start to zoom in, more detail starts to show up. And so I'm going to keep zooming in, and you can do the little plus sign. You can also use your mouse wheel to zoom in. And as you get in closer, you start to see more detail. So parcel lines start to show up. These are property lines, so you can see where how the properties are shaped, and we will draw lines along the backs of properties so that every single person who lives in the county is a definitive answer of where you would go in any particular option. And as you go in further, you get some more detail. It shows you actual address numbers on the parcels, things like that, that really can help inform you about what things are like in an area of interest. If you're on a phone, this little plus sign will probably be minimized. You have to just click on this little arrow and it'll pull up some options. You can view the school zones. So of course we have elementary zones. There is only one middle and one high school in this district. So it's the whole county is the middle and high school. But you can turn on your planning blocks, and you can also interact with this. And so you'll see if you turn this on, there's a plus sign here. So you can look at the labels of the tract. So this will tell you what the tract ID number is. So that planning block number. Also the K5 counts are right here. So you can turn that on and see the labels will change to show you how many K through 5th graders live in each planning block. And these will be the building blocks that we use for redistricting as we start to move areas around to populate the new elementary school and accomplish our other objectives. There's some other cool tools in here. Zoom to school zones, so you could zoom just to any of your elementary zones, just to see the whole zone. That is something that you can use. This next tool is something I find to be very helpful. It's a zoom to subdivision feature. And so any member of the public, this has a list of all of your subdivisions that are provided by the county. And so we can go into any particular subdivision here, click on any subdivision, and it'll zoom to your subdivision. This can help you kind of look at an area, and then you can zoom out to see how you look in relation to the rest of the county. As you provide input to us, since we're from Ohio and don't know New Kent nearly as well as everybody who lives there, we will use this as a guide to help us understand where different perspectives that people are providing and things like that. And there's a legend that just shows you what the items look like, what the items are on the map, and you can even print some things off of this map. So as we continue through the process, you'll see under this view school zones, it shows you the elementary zones. You'll start seeing option 1, option 2, option 3, however many options we have will start to be populated on here, and you can toggle them on and off and see how the options compare. And so this is a good platform to also communicate the maps in an interactive way, so you can clearly understand how any particular area in the county would be impacted in this study. We also have a background report, and this is some baseline background information that we've put together for starters. It has some cool maps of each school and just some background information that we shared with this planning team for starters. And this is out there for you as well, so that you guys can look at the background report and look at the details of that. And I would just encourage you to reference that background report or this presentation. If you have any questions about the process, the timeline, you can always come back to here, and we'll keep modifying this to meet the needs of the public and make sure that we're listening to you and engaging you and letting you participate and give us input that's very important. So that's all I have in terms of the presentation that we've put together today. I would just really thank you all for participating. Please share the word out to your members of the public that what's going on. Look for some options sometime in the mid to late summer is when we will start having options to share with you guys, and look forward to working with everybody in New Kent County.
Thank you, Mr. Cropper, for going through the presentation. As Mr. Cropper mentioned, this is a lengthy process, and we wanted to start tonight by really taking you behind the scenes and showing how we will develop options and how we'll do that with you. So I have a couple questions. The first is really for me, just for clarification purposes for the audience. You mentioned that there would be multiple options. So how many options do you typically put forward for a community to kind of look through and give pros and cons to each?
For a district of this size, I would anticipate probably 2 options. It's possible there could be 3, but when you're going from 2 elementary schools to 3 elementary schools, you have limited number of options that can be created. And so I would expect to see, especially when we go to the public, you would probably see 1 or 2 options at that public engagement session in August. A lot of it really depends on the progress of the planning team and the staff. We want to take options forward that meet the objectives and criteria, and we want to keep moving ahead with options that the district feels comfortable with. We don't want to put any option out there that they do not want to, that they would not consider. And so I would estimate 1 or 2 options is probably what you'll see coming for that August presentation, is what I would guess.
And from those options, we'd be able to, with feedback from the public, kind of tweak those options as it relates to New Kent, matching those objectives and criteria. So even once we get the options, there's still flexibility in that through this process. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So got a couple questions for you, and feel free while I'm talking, if you're on the call or watching on Zoom, to drop questions in the chat box. We're taking questions at this time. Great question. We kicked off kindergarten registration just the other day. Are your planning meetings taking into account incoming kindergarten students? And maybe it'd be helpful to talk about how we predict incoming kindergarten students.
Yes, we will be looking at ongoing trends of enrollment. We like to focus on the data set that we have is March of 2020. And so we use that as the baseline, but we always like to get an understanding of what the incoming kindergarten and incoming classes look like so that we can be proactive. You have to be careful of mixing and matching data sets into one. It's good to keep the planning data set as a complete set, but then be mindful of what's coming down the pipeline. And it's even more important and in this time of our lives with a lot of uncertainties coming into this next fall, with the impact of the stay-at-home orders and everything else that we are going through as citizens, to really understand how that may impact enrollment. So I think we will certainly be looking at incoming kindergartners as well as incoming counts for any particular grade level.
Perfect. There was a second part of this question, but I think you answered it, but I'll ask it just in case. Will the planning block counts be adjusted based on those additional numbers? I think you answered that, but anything you want to add there as far as planning block being adjusted?
The planning blocks certainly can be adjusted. And the question when you ask yourself, do we need to adjust a planning block? The real question is, does the planning block violate the criteria? So is the planning block, should it go, is it splitting up a subdivision? If for another case, could be the planning blocks drawn down the middle of a road, where you may want the planning block to pick up both sides of a road. So it's those kind of things is really what drives the change of planning block. Or if there's a large planning block that has 2 or 3 communities in it, it's possible that we could split the planning block into smaller pieces. As new information comes as it relates to the incoming kindergartners, we don't typically present a lot of new information at that planning block level different data numbers, because we don't want to confuse what numbers are March and what numbers are a preliminary registration. But we will certainly make sure that we account for that the incoming enrollments and report that in a way that's efficient so that we can make sure that we cover that.
So I believe I know the answer to this, but just to make sure, I think it's in the background report. Are we able to view the planning blocks now? I know we went through that as committee, or will that be available at a later date? So I think the question is about, you shared examples of planning blocks. Are you able to see all the planning blocks now?
Yes. If you go to, let me just type in, it's available on there now. So you can go, if you go to the New Kent Schools webpage, there's this redistricting session notification. If you scroll down, you'll see this new elementary school. Let's see here, or it's down here as well as hot topics. You can click on new elementary school, and then it shows some information here. This is the landing page. If you go to redistricting process, you'll see the interactive redistricting map is located right here. So you could click on this, and this pulls up that interactive map, like I said, where you can turn on planning blocks and you can look at all the planning block data. Another way to look at it is the background report that we've put together has some maps for each school. And let's see, there's a section called planning block mapping. So pardon my fast scrolling here, but when we get down here further, you'll see a series of planning block maps that we orient you on. There's utilization tables in here, and if I get to the back, we typically put the maps near the back so that we can organize it properly. But here are some maps that show you the planning blocks in just a PDF format. So that's something that there's two different sources, the interactive map and then also the background report that you can find on the redistricting page that New Kent County has posted up there.
Perfect, thank you. And what we'll do after this session is we'll make that redistricting website more prominent on our front site. We wanted to go through this process first with you, and then we'll put it closer. So fewer clicks are coming your way very soon. To get to our redistricting information. I have another question. This question is really more from me. And we'll work through these as we go through the process. Mr. Cropper mentioned that fall 21 is when we were looking at opening. That may be more likely fall 22, depending on funding and when the construction actually starts. But the question is, we live closer to where the new elementary school is planned to be built. My child will be attending Watkins this year. But would the expectation be that she would attend the new school next year or whatever year it opened once the redistricting happens? And I would say in a pure sense, yes, that would be the expectation, is you would go to your zone school. That would be the answer at this point. We'll go through that more as we go through this process and as we look through those pieces now. So that would be the intent. If you were zone new school or Watkins or New Kent Elementary, that would be the school that you would attend that year. So one of our priorities is to give this information and to complete this process, to give families time. So we haven't gotten into the grandfathering process and whether the school board would go down the road of grandfathering, which is really what the question is asking. So really that's to be determined, but I would say at this point the quick answer would be yes. The expectation would be to attend your zone school. So give you another minute. I think I've gone through our questions. I know once you see the options, once those options are developed, you'll have a number of more questions and input, and I think our number will jump from the 50 plus that we had tonight greatly. I want to say I appreciate your interest. I really appreciate the committee's work, both during the committee session and in between. We look forward to the next committee meeting in June. So, Mr. Cropper, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in at this time. Anything you want to leave the audience with?
No, all I would say is if you do have additional questions, go to the general feedback form. You can put those in, which will be available on the redistricting webpage. And we look forward to hearing from you, and really just appreciate your involvement in this process. It is a very important part of the process. So thank you for your time, and look forward to seeing you again and working with you again through this process.
Ms. Swinford, I believe we still have you up there as a panelist. Would you like to say anything to close out?
I also would like to thank Mr. Cropper for his work with us. We really appreciate it. This is going to be a great opportunity for those of us in New Kent County. And I look forward to the work that the committee has on their plate for the next couple of months. So again, thank you. And thank you again to Mr. Nichols for keeping this all in the forefront.
Thank you, Ms. Swinford. Thank you to the community again for your support. We're going to work through this together and work through this redistricting process. So as new information emerges, we'll make sure we push that out. Keep in mind that if you missed a piece of this, or you know somebody who missed the whole thing, this is being recorded. We'll have it up on our website. It'll be on the redistricting website. And tonight we debuted live on YouTube. So big things on demand, and you can keep your questions rolling through our website, through our email. With that, I wish everybody a good night. Hope you're safe and well. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to moving forward with the redistricting process. Thank you.
Good night.